Jiwon wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at the orange sky above her. The two suns of Keshari Prime were setting, painting everything in shades of red and gold. She had been working in her small garden all day, trying to grow vegetables from earth seeds. Some grew well here, others did not. But she kept trying. She was tired and hungry. Her small habitat dome stood behind her, a round white building that kept her safe from the wild planet outside. But Jiwon liked to cook outdoors when the weather was good. There was something special about making food under an alien sky. It made her feel less alone on this faraway world. Jiwon set up her portable cooking station outside the dome. She brought out her supplies from inside. Rice, kimchi that she had made last month, pork that came frozen from the supply ships, vegetables, spices. Tonight she would make kimchi jjigae, a spicy stew that reminded her of home, of earth, of her grandmother's kitchen. She started a fire in her camp stove and put a pot on top. The smell of sesame oil heating up made her smile. She added the kimchi first, letting it sizzle and pop. Then the pork, then water and spices. The red pepper flakes turned the broth deep orange. Steam rose up, carrying the rich smell into the air. Jiwon stirred the pot and hummed to herself. She did not notice the 3 pairs of golden eyes watching her from the tree line. The forest of Keshari Prime was thick and dark. Strange plants grew there, some as tall as buildings. The trees had purple leaves and black bark. Most humans stayed away from the forest. Dangerous creatures lived in those shadows. The most dangerous were the Talvek. The Talvek were the apex predators of this world. They looked like a mix between a lizard and a wolf, covered in dark scales that could change color. They had long claws, sharp teeth, and bodies built for hunting. Adult Talvek stood 3 meters tall and could run faster than any human vehicle. The colony had strict rules about staying away from them. But these 3 Talvek were not adults. They were cubs, young and curious. They had been hunting small prey near the human settlement when the smell reached them. It was unlike anything they had ever smelled before. Spicy, rich, complex. It made their mouths water. The smallest cub, whose scales were lighter than the others, took a step forward. The middle cub, stockier and more careful, grabbed its sibling's tail to hold it back. The largest cub, lean and bold, simply stared at the human female with intense focus. Jiwon added tofu to her stew and tasted the broth. Perfect. She smiled and turned to get her bowl from the table behind her. That was when she saw them. 3 young Talvek sat at the edge of her camp, just beyond the safety lights. They were not moving, not growling, just sitting, like dogs waiting for dinner. Their golden eyes reflected the firelight. Their scales showed patterns of dark blue and gray. Jiwon's heart jumped into her throat. Her training told her to run inside the dome and seal the door, to call security, to get away from the predators. But something stopped her. These were not adult Talvek. They were young ones, maybe the size of large dogs, and they were not acting aggressive. They were just sitting there, waiting, watching her cook. Jiwon stood very still. She kept the cooking spoon in her hand like a weapon, though she knew it would not help much against Talvek claws. But the cubs did not move closer. They stayed right at the edge of the light, as if they understood boundaries. The smallest cub's nose twitched. Its scales flickered lighter for just a moment. It was smelling the food. Jiwon's fear started to fade, replaced by curiosity. She was a xenobiologist. She studied alien life. And here were 3 young specimens of the planet's most mysterious species, sitting politely near her camp. This was an opportunity that most researchers would never get. She watched them. They watched her. Minutes passed. The stew bubbled in the pot, filling the air with more delicious smells. The smallest cub whined softly, a high-pitched sound that reminded Jiwon of a puppy. The largest cub nudged it with its snout, and the small one went quiet again. They were disciplined, patient, not what she expected from predators. Jiwan made a decision that she knew might be stupid. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She turned back to her pot and continued cooking as if the cubs were not there. She added green onions and more spices. She stirred slowly, letting the ingredients blend together. From the corner of her eye, she saw the cubs relax slightly. The middle one lay down but kept its head up. The smallest one's scales shifted to a warmer color, almost brown. The largest one remained sitting straight, watching every move Jiwan made. When the stew was ready, Jiwan filled her bowl. She sat down at her small folding table and started to eat. The food was hot and spicy and perfect. It warmed her from the inside. She tried to act normal, but her hands shook slightly as she held her spoon. The cubs watched every bite she took. Their heads moved in unison, following the spoon from bowl to mouth and back again. It would have been funny if it were not so strange. Jiwan ate half her bowl. Then she looked at the cubs again. They had not moved from their spots. They had not tried to come closer or threaten her. They were just hoping, waiting to see if she would share. It was the smallest cub that made her decide. It looked at her with those big golden eyes, and its scales shifted to show lighter colors. In all her research, Jiwan had never read about Talvek scales changing like that. What did it mean? She stood up slowly. The cubs tensed, but did not run. Jiwan went to her cooking station and picked up a piece of grilled pork that she had prepared earlier. It was seasoned with salt and pepper and a little bit of the spicy red paste she loved. She held it in her hand and walked toward the cubs. Her heart was pounding. This was against every safety rule. But she kept walking. She stopped 3 meters away from them. The cubs stood up, alert. The largest one stepped forward, positioning itself between Jiwan and the smaller ones. Protective. Jiwan knelt down and placed the meat on the ground. Then she backed away slowly, returning to her table. The largest cub approached the meat carefully. It sniffed it for a long time. Then it picked up the piece in its mouth and backed away. The cubs gathered together, and the largest one tore the meat into 3 parts. It gave pieces to the other 2 first before eating its own share. They shared, just like a family. Jiwan watched as they chewed the meat. Their eyes widened. Their scales began to change colors rapidly, blue, then green, then a bright turquoise that seemed to glow in the dim light. They made soft chirping sounds that sounded almost like pleasure. They liked it. They really liked it. The smallest cub looked at Jiwan again, scales still glowing bright turquoise. Then it sat down. The other 2 followed. They sat together in a neat line, watching her with hope in their eyes. Jiwan laughed quietly. She could not believe what was happening. 3 predator cubs were sitting outside her camp, asking for more food with their eyes and their patient behavior. She knew she should report this. She knew Do-Yun, her colleague at the research station, would tell her she was crazy. But looking at those 3 cubs, with their glowing scales and their polite manners, Jiwan felt something she had not felt in a long time on this lonely planet. She felt connection, understanding, the beginning of something new. The orange sky darkened to purple. The stars began to appear, different constellations than Earth's. Jiwan sat at her table, finishing her stew. The 3 cubs sat at the edge of her camp, patient and hopeful. And for the first time since arriving on Kashari Prime, Jiwan did not feel alone. The next morning, Jiwan woke up early. She had barely slept. Her mind kept going back to the 3 cubs that had visited her camp. When she looked outside her dome window, she half expected to see them sitting there, but the clearing was empty. Only the morning mist hung low over the purple grass. She made herself breakfast and tried to work on her research reports, but she could not focus. Every few minutes she looked outside. Were the cubs real? Had it really happened? Or had she imagined the whole thing because she was lonely? At noon, she had her answer. 3 shapes emerged from the tree line. The cubs were back. They walked to the exact same spot where they had sat the night before. Then they sat down, forming a neat line, and looked at her dome. Jiwan's heart jumped. They had returned. They remembered her. She grabbed her portable camera and went outside. The cubs watched her but did not move. In the daylight, she could see them more clearly. Their scales were beautiful, shifting between dark gray and deep blue. Their eyes were intelligent and alert. The smallest one's scales had lighter patterns, almost like stripes. The middle one was thicker, more muscular. The largest one had a scar on its left shoulder. Jiwan took photos and made notes. Then she went back inside and prepared some food. She cooked rice and grilled some fish with soy sauce and ginger. She also fried some vegetables with garlic and a little bit of hot pepper oil. When she brought the food outside, the cubs' attention focused completely on her. Their noses twitched. Their scales flickered lighter colors. Jiwan placed 3 portions on separate plates and carried them toward the cubs. She put the plates down about 2 meters in front of them, then stepped back. The cubs looked at each other. The largest one made a soft clicking sound. Then all 3 approached the food together. They ate carefully, almost delicately, not like savage beasts, but like creatures who had been taught manners. When they finished, their scales turned bright turquoise again. The smallest one made a chirping sound that seemed happy. The middle one rolled on its back in the purple grass, looking silly and content. The largest one looked directly at Jiwan and slowly blinked its golden eyes. Jiwan found herself smiling. She sat down on the ground, keeping a safe distance. The cubs watched her, but seemed relaxed. She started talking to them quietly, telling them about Earth, about food, about why she had come to this planet. She knew they could not understand her words, but something in her voice seemed to calm them. The smallest cub lay down and rested its head on its paws, listening. After an hour, the cubs stood up and walked back into the forest. They looked back once before disappearing into the trees. This became their routine. Every day around noon, the 3 cubs would come to Jiwan's camp. They would sit and wait patiently. Jiwan would bring them food. She tried different dishes each time: spicy noodles, sweet and sour pork, fried rice, soup with dumplings, grilled meat with special marinades. The cubs loved everything, but they especially loved spicy food. The hotter the spices, the brighter their scales glowed. Jiwan started adding more red pepper and chili oil to their portions. She documented everything in her research notes. On the 5th day, she decided to name them. The smallest one she called Hanul, which meant sky, because its scales sometimes showed light blue patterns. The middle one she named Bora, which meant purple, because it often rolled in the purple grass after eating. The largest one she called Dari, which meant bridge, because it always positioned itself between her and the others, like a bridge of trust. After 2 weeks, the cubs started showing new behaviors. They brought her gifts, strange gifts, a shiny rock, a piece of crystal from the forest, feathers from alien birds. They would place these items at the edge of her camp and make soft chirping sounds. Jiwan kept every gift. She placed them on a shelf in her dome. Hanul seemed especially pleased when it saw its gifts displayed. But Jiwan knew she could not keep this secret forever. The colony had protocols, rules, security measures, and her colleague Doyun was starting to ask questions about why she was cooking so much extra food. On the 18th day, Doyun showed up at her dome unannounced. He was a friend, another xenobiologist who had been on Kashari Prime for 3 years. He was careful and followed every rule perfectly. "Jiwan, we need to talk," he said as she opened the door. "The supply master says you are ordering twice as much food as usual, and yesterday Security Officer Mirai saw something on the drone footage from this sector, large animals near your camp. Ji-won felt her stomach drop. She had known this moment would come. She looked past Doyeon and saw the 3 cubs emerge from the forest right on schedule. They walked to their usual spot and sat down, looking at her dome expectantly. Doyeon turned around and froze. His face went pale. Ji-won, those are Talvek cubs. There are Talvek cubs sitting outside your camp like they are waiting for dinner. Yes, Ji-won said simply. They come every day. Are you insane? Doyeon's voice rose. Those things are predators. Their parents could come looking for them. We need to call security right now and— No, Ji-won said firmly. Watch. She walked to her cooking station and prepared 3 plates of food. She had made bulgogi earlier, thin strips of beef marinated in soy sauce, sugar, sesame oil, and lots of spices. She carried the plates toward the cubs. Dari stood up and made a soft sound. Hanul and Bora waited behind it. Ji-won placed the food down and stepped back. The cubs approached and began eating, their scales glowing bright turquoise and gold. Doyeon stood with his mouth open. I do not believe what I am seeing. They are intelligent, Ji-won said quietly. They understand boundaries. They wait patiently. They share food with each other. They bring me gifts. Doyeon, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. We can learn so much. Or we can get killed, Doyeon replied. But his voice was softer now. He was a scientist, too. She could see the curiosity fighting with his fear. They watched the cubs eat. When they finished, Bora did its usual roll in the grass. Hanul chirped happily. Dari looked at Ji-won and then at Doyeon. Its scales showed patterns neither of them had seen before, swirls of blue and silver. It knows you are new, Ji-won whispered. It is checking if you are safe. Doyeon swallowed hard. Very slowly he raised his hand in a small wave. Dari tilted its head, studying him. Then it made a clicking sound and sat down. I think that means you passed the test, Ji-won said with a small smile. For the next hour, they observed the cubs together. Doyeon took notes and photos. He ran scans with his portable equipment. The data was incredible. The cubs' brain activity showed high levels of social intelligence. Their body language indicated comfort and trust. Their scales changed colors in response to emotions and social cues. This is revolutionary, Doyeon admitted. Everything we thought we knew about Talvek behavior is wrong. They are not just mindless predators. They are social, intelligent, and capable of forming bonds with other species. I know, Ji-won said. That is why we cannot report this to security. Not yet. They will capture the cubs for study or scare them away. We need more time to understand them properly. Doyeon looked torn. This is against every protocol. If adult Talvek come looking for these cubs, then we will deal with it, Ji-won interrupted. But Doyeon, please, give me more time. Help me document this properly. We can publish research that changes everything humans know about this species. Doyeon watched the cubs playing in the clearing. Hanul was chasing its tail. Bora was examining another shiny rock. Dari sat calmly, watching over the other 2 like a guardian. Finally, Doyeon sighed. Okay, but we do this carefully. I will help you. We will document everything. But if there is any sign of danger, any indication that adult Talvek are coming, we report it immediately. Agreed? Agreed, Ji-won said, feeling relief wash over her. From that day on, Doyeon came to her camp every afternoon. Together they studied the cubs. They tested different foods and recorded the reactions. They observed social behaviors and communication patterns. They measured the cubs' growth and health. The cubs seemed to accept Doyeon as part of their routine. Dari always checked him carefully when he arrived, but after the first few days, all 3 cubs greeted both humans with happy chirps. Ji-won taught Doyeon how to cook some of her recipes. He was not very good at it, but the cubs ate his food anyway. They were not picky. They just loved trying new flavors. One evening, as the twin suns set, Jiwon and Doyun sat outside the dome watching the cubs play. Hanil had brought Jiwon a flower from the forest, something with blue petals that glowed faintly. Bora was napping in its favorite spot. Dari was sitting alert, always on guard. "We are playing with fire," Doyun said quietly. "You know that, right? These cubs have parents somewhere, a pack, and Talvek packs do not like humans." "I know," Jiwon replied. "But look at them, Doyun. Look at how they trust us. Maybe this is how we are supposed to interact with this world, not with fear and weapons, but with patience and food and kindness." "Maybe," Doyun said. "Or maybe we are about to learn a very hard lesson." They sat in silence as the stars came out. The cubs seemed peaceful and content. But deep in the forest, in the shadows between the purple trees, something was watching, something large and ancient and very, very patient. The adults were coming. It happened on the 32nd day. Jiwon was preparing dinner as usual. She had gotten brave and was trying to make a more complicated dish, a spicy seafood stew with noodles. The smell was rich and strong, mixing with the evening air. Hanul, Bora, and Dari sat in their usual spots, watching her work with patient eyes. Doyun had gone back to the main research station to file reports and get more supplies. Jiwon was alone. She did not mind. She had grown comfortable with the cubs. Sometimes she even sang while she cooked, and they seemed to like the sound of her voice. She was chopping vegetables when Dari suddenly stood up. Its scales turned dark gray, almost black. It made a sound Jiwon had never heard before, a deep, rumbling growl that made her freeze. Hanul and Bora scrambled to their feet. Their scales also darkened. All three cubs turned to face the forest, their bodies tense and ready. Then Jiwon felt it. A vibration in the ground, a presence in the air that made her skin prickle. Something was coming. Something big. The first adult Talvek emerged from the tree line like a shadow taking solid form. It was massive, easily 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Its scales were deep black with patterns of dark red. Its claws were as long as Jiwon's forearm. Its eyes glowed like molten gold in the dim light. Then another appeared, and another, and 2 more. 5 adult Talvek, moving with deadly grace, surrounded the clearing. Their scales showed patterns of aggression, dark colors with sharp, jagged markings. Low growls rumbled from their throats like distant thunder. Jiwon's heart stopped. Her training screamed at her to run, to get inside the dome, to seal the door and call for help. But her legs would not move. She stood frozen, holding a kitchen knife that seemed ridiculously small. The cubs moved quickly. Dari positioned itself between Jiwon and the adults. Hanul and Bora flanked it, forming a protective wall. Their small bodies trembled, but they did not run. They stayed between the human and their pack. The largest adult Talvek stepped forward. It was bigger than the others, with scars across its snout and shoulders. Its scales were so dark they looked like pieces of night itself. This was the pack leader, the alpha. It looked at the cubs, then at Jiwon, then back at the cubs. It made a sound, complex, layered with different tones. The cubs responded with their own sounds, their scales flickering rapidly through different colors and patterns. They were communicating. Jiwon realized she was watching a conversation in a language humans had never understood. The cubs' scales showed turquoise and blue. The adult scales remained dark and aggressive. This was not going well. The alpha took another step forward. Dari growled, a brave sound from such a small creature. The alpha's eyes narrowed. It could crush the cub with one paw, but it waited. Jiwon's communication device was inside the dome. She needed to call for help. Security Captain Mireille needed to know about this. But if she moved, if she ran, would the adults attack? The alpha made a sharp barking sound. The other 4 adults began to circle the clearing, cutting off any escape. They moved with coordinated precision, like soldiers who had fought together for years. Jiwon's dome was behind her, but she would never reach it in time. Then something unexpected happened. The alpha sat down. Its eyes never left Jiwan, but it lowered itself to the ground in a sitting position, tail curled around its massive body. The other adults looked confused for a moment, then slowly followed their leader's example. They all sat, forming a half circle around Jiwan and the cubs. They were waiting, testing her. Jiwan understood with sudden clarity that this was a moment that would define everything. The adults had tracked their young to this place. They had found a human feeding their cubs, changing their cubs, teaching their cubs new things. They could have attacked immediately, but they had not. They were waiting to see what she would do. Jiwan's hands shook. Her breath came in short gasps. But she was a scientist. She observed. She learned. She adapted. And right now, these predators were showing her something important. They valued patience. They valued those who could provide without demanding dominance. She looked at her cooking pot, still steaming on the stove, at the ingredients spread across her work table, at the ridiculous kitchen knife in her hand. Then Jiwan made the craziest decision of her life. She went back to cooking. Her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped the knife. But she kept moving. She chopped the rest of the vegetables. She added them to the pot. She stirred the stew slowly, letting the smells grow stronger and richer. The adults watched. Their scales flickered slightly lighter. The cubs remained in their protective position, but their tension eased a bit. Dari glanced back at Jiwan, then at the alpha, then back at the stew. Its meaning was clear. See? This is what she does. She makes food. She shares. Jiwan cooked like her life depended on it, because it did. She added more spices, extra red pepper flakes, fish sauce, sesame oil. She made the stew as flavorful and aromatic as she possibly could. The smell filled the clearing, mixing with the alien forest scents. Minutes passed. They felt like hours. The adults remained seated, watching every move she made. One of them, smaller than the others with lighter scales, tilted its head curiously. Another sniffed the air repeatedly, its nose twitching. When the stew was ready, Jiwan took a deep breath. She picked up her largest serving bowl and filled it. Then she walked toward the alpha, moving slowly and deliberately. Every instinct screamed at her to run away. Not toward the 3-meter-tall predator with claws that could gut her in seconds. The cubs chirped nervously. Dari moved slightly to the side as if to say, "Be careful." Jiwan stopped 3 meters from the alpha, close enough to show respect, far enough to run if needed, though she knew running would be useless. She knelt down and placed the bowl on the ground. Then she backed away, never taking her eyes off the massive creature. The alpha stared at her for a long moment. Its golden eyes were intelligent, evaluating, measuring. Then it stood and approached the bowl. It sniffed the food for what felt like an eternity. The other adults watched, completely still. Finally, the alpha lowered its head and took a bite. The reaction was immediate. The alpha's scales exploded in colors Jiwan had never seen. Sapphire blue, brilliant gold, deep crimson. Patterns swirled and flowed across its body like living art. It made a sound, deep and resonant, that echoed through the clearing. The other adults stood up, excited. The alpha ate more of the stew, its scales continuing their incredible color show. Then it stepped back and made a barking sound. The other adults approached the bowl, taking turns tasting the food. Each one reacted the same way. Colors burst across their scales. They made sounds of pleasure and satisfaction. One of them rolled on the ground like Bora always did. Another shook its head as if the spicy flavors were overwhelming but wonderful. The cubs broke their protective formation and ran to join the adults. All 8 Talvek gathered around the bowl, taking turns eating, their scales showing joy and contentment. The clearing was full of color and sound, a celebration Jiwan never could have imagined. She slowly walked back to her cooking station. Her legs almost gave out, but she stayed standing. She filled more bowls, larger portions. She brought them to the Talvek one by one. They ate eagerly, no longer showing any aggression. Their scales showed blues and greens and golds, colors of happiness, of bonding, of acceptance. The Alpha approached Jiwan directly. She forced herself not to run. It came close, so close she could feel its breath. It smelled like the forest, like stone and earth and wild things. It looked down at her from its massive height. Then, slowly and deliberately, the Alpha lowered its head and touched its snout to Jiwan's shoulder. Gentle, careful not to hurt. It made a soft, rumbling sound vibrating through its chest. Jiwan barely breathed. Was this a greeting? A thank you? A warning? The Alpha pulled back and sat down again, right in front of her. The other adults followed. They all sat, forming a circle around her and the cubs. They waited. Jiwan understood. They wanted more. They wanted to experience more of these incredible new flavors. Okay, she whispered, her voice shaking. Okay, I need to cook more food. A lot more food. She went back to her cooking station and started pulling out every ingredient she had. Rice, noodles, meat, vegetables, sauces, spices. She would cook everything she had. A feast. Because somehow, impossibly, she was having dinner with 8 Talvek predators who had decided not to kill her. As she worked, she heard a sound. The communication device inside her dome was beeping urgently. Someone was trying to reach her, probably Doyen, maybe security. They must have detected the adult Talvek near her camp, but Jiwan could not answer. Not yet. She was busy cooking. The Talvek watched her, patient and expectant. Hanel came to sit beside her cooking station, looking up at her with those golden eyes. Dari stood guard, as always. Bora brought her another shiny rock and placed it carefully near her feet. The sky darkened. The stars came out, and in a small clearing on an alien planet, a human woman cooked for predators who had chosen to sit and wait instead of attack and kill. Jiwan did not know what would happen next. She did not know if she would survive the night. But as she cooked and watched the Talvek's scales glow with beautiful colors, she felt something she had never expected to feel. Hope. Connection. The beginning of understanding between two species who were supposed to be enemies. The pack leader watched her work, its eyes intelligent and approving. And Jiwan kept cooking, her hands steady now, her fear replaced by wonder. The communication device kept beeping inside the dome. Jiwan ignored it. She was too busy cooking the biggest meal of her life. She had started 4 different pots going at once. In one pot, she made bulgogi, thin strips of beef marinated in soy sauce, sugar, sesame oil, garlic, and lots of black pepper. In another, she cooked teokbokki, rice cakes in spicy red sauce. The third pot held ramyeon noodles with eggs and vegetables. The fourth was making more of the seafood stew that the Alpha had loved so much. Her small cooking station was not enough. She brought out her indoor stove as well, setting it up in the clearing. The Talvek watched with fascination as she worked. Their scales showed colors of curiosity, light blues and soft greens. The Alpha made a series of clicking sounds. One of the other adults, the one with lighter scales, stood up and walked into the forest. It returned minutes later, dragging a large piece of dead wood. It placed the wood near Jiwan's cooking area and stepped back. Jiwan stared. The Talvek was helping her. It had understood she needed fuel for her fire. She nodded her thanks and added the wood to her camp stove. The adult's scales flickered with warm orange. Was that pleasure? Pride? She kept cooking. She fried chicken pieces until they were crispy, then tossed them in a sauce made with honey, soy sauce, garlic, and her special spicy pepper paste. The smell made all the Talvek lean forward, their noses working overtime. She grilled fish with salt and lemon. She made fried rice with vegetables and scrambled eggs. She cooked dumplings, the frozen ones from her supply stock, and pan-fried them until they were golden and crispy. She made every kind of banchan she could think of: seasoned spinach, pickled radish, spicy cucumber salad. 2 hours passed. Jiwon's arms ached from stirring and chopping. Sweat dripped down her face. But she kept going. This was not just about food anymore. This was communication. This was diplomacy. This was showing these intelligent creatures that humans could give without taking, could share without demanding. Her friend Hyejin's voice suddenly crackled through the outdoor speaker she had set up weeks ago. Jiwon had forgotten she had connected her communication device to the external speakers. "Jiwon! Jiwon, answer me! Security detected 8 adult Talvek near your position. We are sending a rescue team. Get inside your dome and seal it now." The Talvek all turned to look at the speaker, their scales darkening slightly. Jiwon quickly wiped her hands and ran to the device. She switched it to two-way communication. "Hyejin, wait! Do not send security. Everything is fine." "Fine? Fine? There are 8 predators surrounding your camp. The drones show—" "They are not attacking," Jiwon interrupted. "Hyejin, listen to me. They are sitting peacefully. I am feeding them. We are having dinner together." There was a long silence. Then Hyejin's voice came back, sounding shocked. "You are feeding them? Jiwon, have you lost your mind?" "Probably," Jiwon admitted. "But Hyejin, I need your help. I am cooking for 8 adult Talvek and 3 cubs. I need more food. A lot more food. Can you bring supplies and tell security to stay back? Any aggressive action will ruin everything." Another pause. Then a different voice came through the speaker. "Captain Mirai from Colony Security." Her voice was sharp and professional. "Dr. Jiwon, this is Captain Mirai. I cannot authorize sending civilians into a situation with multiple hostile Talvek. You need to evacuate immediately." "They are not hostile," Jiwon said firmly, watching the Talvek watch her. "Captain, these creatures are intelligent. They tracked their cubs here. They could have attacked me immediately. But they did not. They sat down and waited. They are testing me, testing humans. And right now, I am passing that test. Please, trust me. Just this once." The Alpha made a soft sound. It stood and walked slowly toward the speaker, curious about the device making noises. Jiwon held her breath. The massive predator sniffed the speaker, tilted its head, then looked at Jiwon. It made a questioning chirp, the same sound the cubs made when they wanted food. Jiwon almost laughed. The Alpha was asking if the speaker was food. "No, not food," she said gently. "That is for talking to other humans." The Alpha sat down again, seemingly satisfied. Through the speaker, Jiwon heard frantic whispering. Then Hyejin's voice came back. "Jiwon, I am looking at the drone footage right now. That Talvek just walked up to you and then sat back down. Peacefully. I do not believe what I am seeing." "Believe it," Jiwon said. "Now will you help me? I need a lot of food. Especially meat and spicy ingredients." More whispering. Then Captain Mirai spoke again, her voice tight. "I am sending a transport drone with supplies, but I am also positioning security teams around your location. If anything goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," Jiwon said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. "Just keep your teams out of sight. These Talvek are calm now. Let us keep them that way." The communication clicked off. Jiwon went back to cooking. 20 minutes later, she heard the hum of the transport drone. It descended into the clearing, staying high and moving slowly to avoid startling the Talvek. The predators watched the drone with interest but no aggression. Their scales showed curious patterns. The drone lowered several large supply containers and then quickly flew away. Jiwon opened the containers and almost cried with relief. Hyejin had sent everything: fresh meat, vegetables, noodles, rice, bottles of sauce and spices, even frozen dumplings and pre-marinated meat. There was enough food here to feed a small army, or 8 very large predators. Jiwon got to work with renewed energy. She laid out multiple cooking stations. She prepared food assembly line style, maximizing efficiency. The Talvek watched, completely absorbed in the process. Some of them made soft sounds to each other, their scales flickering in patterns that might have been conversation. Dari came to sit beside her, watching closely. The cub seemed proud, as if saying, "See? I told you she was special." As Jiwan cooked, the alpha approached her again. This time it was not alone. It brought the lighter-scaled adult with it. The two stood in front of Jiwan, and the alpha made a series of complex sounds, gesturing with its head toward the other Talvek. Jiwan watched, trying to understand. The alpha seemed to be introducing the others. It pointed its snout at each adult Talvek in turn, making different sounds for each one. Names? Was it telling her their names? She decided to try something. She pointed at the alpha and said clearly, "Vekra." It was the closest human approximation she could make of the sound the alpha had used for itself. The alpha's scales flashed bright gold. It made an approving rumble. Yes, that was its name. Jiwan pointed at the lighter-scaled Talvek. "Lyra?" she guessed, based on the sound the alpha had made. Another flash of gold scales. The lighter Talvek, Lyra, made a pleased chirping sound. For the next few minutes, as food cooked, Jiwan learned the names of the pack. Vekra, the alpha. Lyra, the lighter one who had brought her firewood. Tark, a massive male with dark stripes. Kes, a lean female with quick movements. Ren, the smallest adult with unusual purple-tinted scales. The cubs she already knew. Hanol, Bora, and Dari. The young ones who had started everything. When the food was ready, Jiwan began serving. She filled large metal trays she had received in the supply drop. She made sure each portion was generous, loaded with meat and vegetables and noodles and rice. She added extra spicy sauce to everything, remembering how much the Talvek loved strong flavors. She served Vekra first, out of respect for its position as alpha. Then Lyra. Then the others in what seemed to be pack order. Finally, she served the cubs, who bounced excitedly as they waited their turn. The feast began. 8 adult Talvek and 3 cubs ate human food under the stars of Kashari Prime. Their scales turned into a light show of colors, blues and golds and greens and reds, swirling patterns of pure joy and satisfaction. They made sounds of pleasure, deep rumbles and happy chirps and satisfied growls. Jiwan served more food as they ate. She refilled trays, brought out side dishes, offered different combinations of flavors. She moved between them like a server at a restaurant, reading their reactions, learning what each one preferred. Tark loved the spiciest foods and kept pointing at the red pepper flakes. Kes preferred fish over meat. Ren had a surprising sweet tooth and made excited sounds when eating the honey-glazed chicken. Lyra carefully tasted everything, savoring each bite. And Vekra ate with deep satisfaction, its scales constantly glowing with warm colors. The cubs ate until their bellies were round, then lay down in a pile together, making contented sounds. As the Talvek ate, a small transport vehicle approached in the distance. Jiwan saw Yejin jump out, followed by Doyun. They walked toward the camp, slowly, nervously, staying behind the safety lights. Vekra noticed them immediately. It stood, alert. The other adults paused in their eating, watching the newcomers. Jiwan quickly moved between them. "Friends," she said clearly, pointing at Hyejin and Doyun. "They are friends. They brought food. Friends." She made a welcoming gesture. Hyejin and Doyun approached slowly, their eyes wide with fear and wonder. They stopped a safe distance away, taking in the incredible scene. 8 massive Talvek predators eating human food, their scales glowing with beautiful colors. "Jiwan," Hyejin whispered, "this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible." "And yet," Jiwan said with a tired smile, "here we are." Vekra studied the newcomers for a long moment. Then it sat back down and resumed eating. The other Talvek followed its example. The message was clear. These newcomers were accepted because Jiwon accepted them. Hyejin and Doyun came closer. Hyejin was the colony's head chef, a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She looked at Jiwon's cooking setup and immediately started helping, pulling out her own portable equipment from the bags she had brought. "If we are doing this," Hyejin said, her voice shaking slightly, "we are doing it right. You cannot feed a pack of predators with just basic camp cooking." Together, the three humans cooked. Hyejin brought out ingredients Jiwon did not even know were available on the colony. Special marinades, rare spices imported from Earth, professional cooking tools. She worked with focused intensity, creating dishes that were not just food, but art. The Talvek watched this new human with interest. When Hyejin served her first dish, a complex noodle preparation with multiple layers of flavor, Vekra's scales exploded in colors so bright they almost hurt to look at. Hyejin blinked back tears. "It likes my cooking," she whispered in wonder. "They love all of it," Jiwon said. "That is what started everything. The cubs smelled my cooking and could not resist. And now look, an entire pack, sharing a meal with humans." Doyen was taking notes frantically, documenting everything. The colors of the scales, the sounds they made, the way they interacted with each other and with the humans. His hands shook with excitement. "This changes everything," he said. "Everything we thought we knew about Talvek society, about their intelligence, about their capacity for cross-species communication, it is all wrong. We need to completely rewrite our understanding." The feast continued for hours. As the twin moons rose, humans and Talvek sat together in the clearing, sharing food and presents. It was not peaceful. Talvek were never truly peaceful, always alert, always aware. But it was harmonious, balanced, a moment of connection between two species who had never thought such connection was possible. And it all started because three curious cubs could not resist the smell of good cooking. 3 months had passed since that first feast. The small clearing outside Jiwon's dome had transformed into something the colony now called the Exchange Kitchen. It was no longer just Jiwon's personal camp. It had become a meeting place, a bridge between two species, a symbol of possibility. The structure had grown. Additional domes had been built, creating a complex of buildings. There was a large cooking area with multiple stations, a dining space with areas for both humans and Talvek, storage facilities for food, even a small medical station, though thankfully it had not been needed. Jiwon stood in the main cooking area, preparing today's lesson. She was no longer alone. Sunho, a young man from the colony's agricultural division, worked beside her as her assistant. He was teaching Talvek cubs how to identify edible plants while Jiwon prepared the cooking demonstration. Yes, cubs. Not just Hanul, Bora, and Dari. More cubs had come. Curious young Talvek from other packs, brought by their parents to experience the strange new things happening at the human settlement. Today, 8 cubs sat in neat rows, watching Jiwon with focused attention. The original 3 were her star students. Hanul could now identify over 50 different earth plants. Bora had learned to help prepare ingredients, using its claws with surprising delicacy to slice vegetables. Dari supervised the other cubs, maintaining order with the same protective instinct it had always shown. "Today we will learn about fermentation," Jiwon announced to the cubs. "This is how humans preserve food and create new flavors over time." The cubs leaned forward, their scales showing colors of interest. She showed them jars of kimchi at different stages of fermentation. She explained the process, using simple words and lots of gestures. Sunho translated some concepts using the basic Talvek language that humans had finally started to learn. Vekra entered the compound, followed by Lyra and several other adult Talvek. They came almost every day now, sometimes to eat, sometimes just to observe, sometimes to bring gifts, Strange fruits from deep in the forest, interesting plants, even small prey animals that they wanted humans to try cooking. The relationship had formalized. After that first feast, Vecra had brought Jiwon to its pack's territory deep in the forest. Doyun and Captain Mirai had followed at a distance, terrified but determined to document everything. Vecra had shown them the pack's den, introduced them to Elder Talvek, and performed what researchers now believed was a binding ceremony. The Talvek had accepted humans as allies, trading partners, friends. The galactic community had been shocked. News of the alliance had spread to every human colony, to Earth itself, to the aliens humanity traded with. The Talvek, the feared predators of Keshari Prime, were now humanity's strongest allies in this sector of space. Other packs had come to meet Jiwon. Some were suspicious, some were hostile, but Vecra's pack vouched for her, and she always had the same answer. She invited them to sit and eat. Food was a language everyone understood. Flavors transcended species. The simple act of sharing a meal created bonds that words and treaties could not. Hyejin had become famous. She had left her position as colony head chef and now worked full-time at the exchange kitchen, developing fusion recipes that combined Earth ingredients with native Keshari plants. Her creations were incredible. The Talvek loved them. Human colonists traveled from distant settlements just to taste her food and see the Talvek dining peacefully nearby. Doyun's research had revolutionized xenobiology. His papers on Talvek intelligence, communication, and social structure were being studied at universities across human space. He had discovered that Talvek scale patterns were actually a complex language as sophisticated as human speech. Every color, every pattern, every shift had meaning. Humans were learning to read it, slowly but surely. Captain Mirai had changed too. She had been terrified that first night, watching her superior officer eat dinner surrounded by predators. But she had seen something important. She had seen that different approaches could work, that not every encounter with aliens needed weapons and shields. Now she trained her security forces in cultural sensitivity and communication protocols. The soldiers stationed at the exchange kitchen learned to cook alongside learning to shoot. As Jiwon finished her fermentation lesson, a transport ship descended from the sky. This was not a small supply drone. This was a proper diplomatic vessel, marked with the symbols of the colonial fleet. Admiral Taejin had come. Again. He visited every few weeks, bringing observers and officials and diplomats who wanted to see the miracle of the exchange kitchen with their own eyes. Taejin was an old military man, scarred from decades of service, but he had become one of the strongest supporters of Jiwon's work. He stepped off his ship wearing a formal uniform, but Jiwon knew he would change into casual clothes soon. He preferred eating with the Talvek in comfort. Dr. Jiwon, he greeted her with a small bow. The kitchen grows larger every time I visit. We keep expanding, Jiwon said with a smile. More packs want to participate. More humans want to learn. We are building a community, Admiral. Vecra approached Taejin and made the greeting sound they had established. Taejin responded with the human approximation. Their scales showed mutual respect, Vecra's glowing with warm gold, acknowledging the human leader. Taejin watched the cubs at their lesson. My government wants to replicate this program on other colonies, other worlds where humans and native species have difficult relations. They want to send you to train others. Jiwon shook her head. I cannot leave. This is my home now, but we can train others here. Send people to learn. Then send them out to spread the approach. I will recommend that, Taejin said. You have done something remarkable here, Dr. Jiwon. You have shown that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our ships. It is our ability to connect, to share, to turn strangers into family. That evening, they held another feast. It had become a tradition. Once a week, the exchange kitchen prepared a massive dinner for anyone who wanted to attend, humans from the colony. Talvek from multiple packs, scientists and soldiers and farmers and children, they all came together to eat and talk and learn about each other. Jiwan moved through the crowd, checking on food, greeting guests, solving small problems. Hyajin worked her cooking magic with a team of assistants, both human and Talvek cubs who had learned enough to help. Sunho managed the serving logistics. Doyun documented everything, as always. Hanul found Jiwan in the crowd and chirped for attention. Its scales glowed bright blue. The color Jiwan had learned meant excitement. The cub had brought something, a flower from the forest, one with purple petals that sparkled in the light. A gift, as always. "Thank you, Hanul," Jiwan said softly, taking the flower. "It is beautiful." The cub made a pleased sound and bounded back to its siblings. They were teenagers now, these three cubs. Bigger, stronger, but still the same curious youngsters who had first sat outside her camp, hoping for a taste of something new. As the feast continued, Jiwan found a quiet moment to sit and watch. Humans and Talvek ate side by side. Children of both species played together in the open areas. Adults discussed farming techniques and hunting patterns and cooking methods. Scales glowed with colors of happiness and contentment. It was not perfect. There were still misunderstandings, cultural differences that caused friction, humans who were afraid of Talvek claws, Talvek who were suspicious of human technology. But they were working through it, one meal at a time. Dari came to sit beside Jiwon, now as tall as she was. The protective cub had grown into a strong young adult, but it still positioned itself between her and potential threats. Always watching, always guarding. "You know I am safe here, right?" Jiwon said, patting Dari's scaled shoulder. "You do not need to protect me anymore." Dari made a soft rumbling sound that she had learned meant disagreement. It would always protect her. That was its nature. That was its choice. Vecra approached and sat on her other side. The massive alpha looked out at the feast, at the mixing of species, at the peace it had helped create. Its scales showed deep satisfaction and pride. Through Sunho's translation device, Vecra spoke. The device had improved significantly in recent months, getting better at interpreting scale patterns and sounds. "We have a saying among our people," Vecra's translated voice said. "The strongest packs are those who know when to bare teeth and when to share prey. You showed us a third path, one we had forgotten, not baring teeth, not sharing prey, but creating new prey together, building something larger than any single pack." Jiwan felt tears in her eyes. "I just cooked some food. You and your pack chose to sit and taste it instead of attacking. That choice changed everything. You offered without fear, even when fear would have been wise," Vecra said. "That takes a different kind of strength, a kind my species had not seen before." Admiral Tajin joined them, holding a plate of Hyajin's special fusion noodles. "I am writing my report tonight," he said. "My commanders want to know how this happened. How one xenobiologist created an alliance that diplomats and soldiers could not achieve in years of trying." "What will you tell them?" Jiwan asked. Taejin looked out at the feast, at the mixing species, at the children playing together, at the future being built one meal at a time. "I will tell them the truth," he said, "that humanity's greatest weapon is not our technology, not our ships or our soldiers or our trade agreements. It is our instinct to feed others, to share what we have, to turn strangers into guests and guests into family." He paused, watching Hanol and Bora play fighting while human children cheered them on. "I will tell them that peace is not built with treaties and boundaries. It is built with patience and food, and the willingness to sit with those who are different from us. I will tell them about 3 curious cubs who smelled cooking and sat politely, hoping for a taste, and about one woman who was brave enough to share, Jiwon smiled. It sounds too simple when you say it like that. The best solutions usually are, Taejin replied. We just make them complicated because we cannot believe something so simple could work. The feast continued into the night. The twin moons rose, casting silver light over the exchange kitchen. Humans and Talvek ate and talked and learned. Children of both species grew up knowing each other not as enemies or strangers, but as neighbors, as friends. Jiwon stayed up late, as always, making sure everyone had enough food, making sure the Talvek who preferred extra spice got it, making sure the human children were safe around the adult Talvek who were still learning how to be gentle around smaller beings. As the last guests departed, Vekra's pack remained behind to help clean up. This, too, had become tradition. They carried away heavy equipment with ease, cleared spaces, helped organize supplies, working together, building together. Hanol, Bora, and Dari curled up near the main cooking area, unwilling to leave. They slept there most nights now, guarding the place that had become central to their lives. Jiwon covered them with a large blanket she had made specifically for Talvek, heat-retaining material that kept their scaled bodies comfortable in the cool night air. They made soft sounds of contentment in their sleep. She looked up at the alien stars above. 3 months ago, she had been a lonely scientist on a distant world, cooking alone in her camp. Now she was at the center of something revolutionary, something that would change how humans and aliens interacted across the galaxy. All because 3 predator cubs saw her cooking and sat patiently, hoping she would let them sample something new. Jiwon smiled and went inside to plan tomorrow's menu. There were always more mouths to feed, more connections to build, more bridges to construct between species who thought they could never understand each other. But with food and patience and an open heart, anything was possible. Even peace between predators and prey, even friendship between species separated by evolution and instinct. Even family built not from blood, but from the simple act of sharing a meal. The exchange kitchen would continue to grow. More Talvek packs would come, more humans would learn. The program would spread to other colonies, other worlds, and everywhere it went, the same simple truth would prove itself. The fastest way to someone's trust is through their stomach. The fastest way to peace is through a shared meal. And the fastest way to build a future is to sit down together and eat, no matter how different you might be. As Jiwon fell asleep that night, she heard Dari's gentle rumbling snore outside her window, Hanul and Bora's soft breathing, the sounds of her strange new family. She had come to Kashari Prime to study alien life. Instead, she had learned the most important lesson of all. Home is not where you come from. It is who you share your food with, who sits patiently, waiting for you to offer them something new. Who stays even when things are difficult, because the connection is worth more than the struggle. And sometimes, home is built on the curiosity of 3 predator cubs and the courage of 1 human who chose to feed them instead of fear them.